Happy 2023. Thank you for kicking off your month and your year with us. My name is Val Riley. I'm head of content marketing at Insightly, and I am going to be your moderator for today's webinar. Today's presenter is Sam McKenna. Sam is the CEO of #Sam Sales Consulting. She is an award-winning speaker. She is a sales leader, and she is a brand ambassador for LinkedIn. So perfect person to speak with us about that topic today. And your moderator, your host today is Chip House. Chip is the CMO here at Insightly, and he's got more than 20 years of experience with all those great tech companies you see on your screen. So while we were waiting, we did have a poll open, and I'm going to pull up those poll results. We're talking all about 2023 quotas, Chip. So how does it look?
Hey, Val. So what I'm seeing here is nearly half are seeing their quota go up in 2023 versus 2022. And, we have plenty that are staying the same. Just 6%, 6% are the quota is actually lower this year. So anyway, I think that's a great way to set the stage. It's probably what I expected. Sam, be interested to get your thoughts too about this poll. But I'll get those from you in a second because I want to kick us off with this awesome stat. A couple of great stats, actually, that I think kind of form the basis for what we're going to start talking about today. So the first is from Glassdoor that says January is the month employees are most likely to think about changing jobs, with almost 1 in 5, 18%, setting this as the most popular month to make a move. And then maybe even more compelling from LinkedIn here, according to LinkedIn, those in director and higher roles are 59% more likely to start a new job in January than any other month. And Sam, I know that these stats are going to play an important role in what we're talking about today. So what are your thoughts about these stats? And let's transition to your first power tip.
Yeah, let's think about the quotas going up first and foremost. How wild is that, right? We're in epic layoff territory. We are in epic we did not hit our numbers territory for a lot of SaaS companies, and we are now we're going to go ahead and raise your quota and ask you to do even more in a looming challenging economic conditions. So Godspeed, everybody. But I think that a lot of these tips will help you work really smart, in addition to how hard you're already working, and hopefully help you crush your goals. I think one interesting thing about these numbers too, right, is you think this is such a perfect opportunity to track job changes if you were not already doing that, right? Think about this, 59% more likely to change jobs in January. And what I think is even more fascinating about this specifically is when we look back at old data from LinkedIn in 2018, as recent as 2018, which I know feels like 100 years ago, but that was 27% more likely to change jobs in January, whereas now it's 59%. That's wild, right? And I think we look at a lot of different things, and I think you're going to see those job changes continue to probably keep up and uptick throughout the year, particularly as we think about return to work and return to office conditions, right? We just saw that breaking news from Disney this week. If you didn't see that, they're requiring 4 days a week back in the office. And I think that flexibility is now going to become a currency. So if you're working for an employer that isn't going to offer that, and you want that flexibility, you're probably going to be more likely to change jobs to a company that does offer that flexibility. So let's dive into tip number one. Chip, want me to just dive right into it here?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, you definitely highlighted that some things have changed in the past couple of years with the global pandemic and lots more people working remotely and maybe more job changing happening. So yeah, I think it's a great segue.
So let's think about this. This has been a power move of mine, I don't know, since probably the day I became an AE, but tracking those job changes, right? This always seems to be a light bulb moment for a lot of people of thinking, I don't track the job changes, or I do track job changes already. I don't need you. And the only thing that I track is the person that moves, right? That's attached to my contract record, let's say in Insightly, and that moves to a different job. But what you've really got to think about is how many people engage with you in the buying cycle, right? We know that from Forrester and Gartner data that up to 20 people can be involved in your buying decision. You guys know this because you go through it every single day. So what we want to think about are, who are your buyers, your influencers, your champions, your skeptics, procurement, your users, right? There are so many people that touch your process. Who are those people, and where have they changed jobs too in the new year or in the coming months. Now, if you followed us for a while at Sam Sales, you know that we're big on the process around if this, then that for most of the sales motions that we have. And this is no different, right? So if we see a job change, right, then of course we reach out. But how do we capture that to begin with? Now, there's a lot of great platforms out there. I would, I'll in full transparency say that we're a partner to Champify, which is a fantastic partner in terms of looking at job changes. But we can also help you with this. And you guys can also not spend a dime except for a LinkedIn Sales Navigator license and do this on your own. So here's what I would encourage you to do. Take a LinkedIn Sales Navigator license and create a list that's called Job Hopper. In that list, every single time you speak to somebody that has a positive experience with you, whether they're created, attached to an opportunity that you create, whether there's somebody that really wants to work with you but doesn't have the budget, doesn't work for a company that values whatever it is that you offer, just signed a 3-year deal with a competitor when that happens. Whoever those people are, make sure to build if I talk to those people, then I add them to a Job Hopper list. And you'll start to see, right? It's not going to pay off in spades to begin with, because those people probably aren't going to change jobs quickly, but over time they will. Particularly if you are a small business, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a consultant like we are, 11 people strong on our team, or even if you're a rep in your territory, start to build that list and see where people change jobs. What I love about this is something you can easily check on a weekly basis, pop in a Sales Navigator, go to that list, and in the top tabs, you'll see anybody who has changed jobs. Now, quick caveat here, this is also going to show you any boomerangs, right? So people who come back or who get promoted. So just keep that in mind too. Might not necessarily be a great job change, but this can also be great for land and expand. Let's say all of your existing clients, where are they changing jobs to? Are they leaving? Are they getting promoted? Are they going to another line of business that you don't currently have a footprint into? There is so much value in this. Now, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I promise I'll stop talking on this particular topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. But you also want to use a little EQ when we do our outreach, right? So the last thing that you want to do is reach out to someone and say, congrats on your new job change. Do you want to buy my stuff? 6 minutes after they change jobs, right? They barely know where the bathroom is, let alone what the company has and if they can buy your product. So we really want to think about is urgent bird gets the worm, right? Capitalizing on that quickly. But when you do that, use your EQ. So if Chip changes jobs decades from now, when he decides to leave Insightly, I would, of course, jump on that immediately. Chip, congrats. So awesome to see this job change. I'm sure you're super excited for your new adventures. It's been such a pleasure working with you the last several decades. We'd love to talk to you about working with you wherever you go now. Could we set some time on the calendar 6 to 8 weeks from now, after you've had a chance to breathe, kind of get your arms around everything that's status quo and the state of affairs that's happening at your new company, and talk about then about how we might be able to support you at that point. What I love about this is that you're capitalizing on the momentum, right? And that urgency. You're making sure that you're the first person to get to them in your category, which shows exponentially higher results that you'll get the business if you're the first person. But you're also using EQ, and you're not making it all about yourself. So you're making it about that buyer and saying, I know you've got a million things on your plate. I know you don't even know what anything happens, what's going on at your current company, but let's talk in 6 or 8 weeks. And that will make a hell of a difference. And you'll probably book the meeting right then and there.
Sam, I love this tip so much. And we talked beforehand. So the first thing I would call out, there's plenty of times in selling where being fast is a huge asset, right? Like an inbound lead or an inbound phone call, being responsive as possible will increase your win rate, right? But in this situation, like you said, EQ is probably the most important thing. And I think the second thing I would say is all of this is predicated on the fact that you're building great relationships with your customers today. And one of the things that we've noticed is we get about 7 to 10% of our customers from former customers, right? So they used to be a customer at one company, they changed jobs, and organically they find Insightly again and choose us. And so I can imagine if you're really actively engaging as a salesperson here, the opportunity is really right.
I think the cool thing to think about with that particular tip in mind, Chip, and for everybody listening, you've got that reactiveness, right? There are all the people that are going to come directly to you. But if we think about that, right, with Chip's data, 7 to 10% of the individuals that are filling out forms on the sheet are previous clients. What about all of the other people that might not proactively reach out, or that perhaps don't operate anymore in a line of business that would hire you, but could still get you in the door? So that's the beauty, I think, of this, of how many people exist out there that do change jobs and that we can even reach out to say, I know your role is a little bit different, or I know the organization Your supporting is a little different now, but we would love to chat with somebody on your team. You've had great experience with us, right? Of course, make sure you know that they've had a great experience with you, but you've had great experience with us. Anything that you could do, any insights you could give, would really appreciate your support. All of that proactive outreach is huge. Last thing I'll say on this tip, think of too, tracking these job changes. Guess what's going to happen in this, especially if you were an individual rep that's tracking this. When you track these job changes, people are going to move outside of your territory, which stinks. But you can also do some really awesome solids for your peers. Help them out a little bit. Say, hey, this buyer, huge champion of ours, just moved in your territory. I thought I'd give you the heads up. Here's the CRM record, right? So you can take a quick look at everything, send them that Insightly URL so they can do a deep dive into it. And then how awesome is that you've done that for somebody else? And they'll say, hey, how'd you do that? Should I be doing it too? And you can really create a system internally. What a great way to stand out. What a great way to tie yourself to ROI in an organization. What a great way to get promoted in the end, especially if you're already a top performer.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Sam. Well, let's move on to power move number 2, because I know it builds on the same statistic. And it as you defined it, it means asking new hires at your company for warm intros to their former colleagues. And so talk to us about that.
One of my favorite tips, and I will tell you, nobody does this. So very, very cool thing. Again, in Sales Navigator, you can create a list, just create a quick search. If you don't have Sales Navigator, number one, I would say, make the investment yourself. It's $900 for the year. Yes, it is a lot of money. Holy moly, will it pay off in spades for you as an individual AE? Make that investment. If you already have it, here's this very cool search that you can do. Create a search and say current company in that search. So this is in your advanced tab, but look for current company and put your own company. And then what you'll do is depending on how large or small your company is, you might do director plus, you might do VP plus, et cetera. Want to make sure it's not too broad that you're getting, 500 notifications every day if you work for like an Accenture or something like that. But look for those titles and then just hit search. Now, what this is going to give you is a list of all the executives that work for your company. Not so exciting. What we want to do is just save the search. And basically every time a new executive comes in, you'll see who they are. And what's really fantastic about this, so this might be somebody in product and engineering and finance, whatever, somebody that you don't even know exists. It might even be in your own department of sales or marketing or, SDR land, but you don't know who they are because it's a different line of business. When that person comes on, click on their profile, hit connect, say, welcome. My gosh, we're so excited to have you. That executive will say, wow, how nice that a random, salesperson is reaching out to me to welcome me. And you're like, knowing that you have ulterior motives here. As soon as they accept you and they're a first degree connection, you can pop back into Navigator. You can click on their 500 connections, that little 500 connections in Sales Navigator. And then in 2 clicks, go and look and see who they know in your existing book of business. So what this surfaces for you right away is anybody that new executive to your company might know or might have connections to into the territory, especially if you've gotten a new book now. What a great exercise to do. Look for anyone that's coming to the company in the last 90 days and just run this right now. But you can reach out to them and say, yeah, great. Okay, very excited you're here. Hey, by the way, you happen to know 3 people at this particular company. I've been trying to get in there. Do you happen to know them? Here's a little bit of context and history on the account of the efforts I've already made. Any advice you can give? And think about how you can send one email, right? One message, one Slack, one whatever, and send 3 different things. You could even send 3 different companies and say, I'm hoping I could ask for a little help. I'm sure you were drinking from the fire hose. I hate that saying. Think of something else. Send me something more creative to say than that. But when you say that, right, you're reaching out and saying, I could use some help. Here's the great thing about that. When new executives join a company, one of the things they're most eager to do is make impact as quickly as they can. And what's the easiest way they can make impact, even if they're not in sales? It's by helping sales, right? So they'll take some quick time and help you out. And on top of that, you are going to stand out because I bet you're probably the only person that's going to reach out to do that. I will tell you that when I joined LinkedIn years ago, only one person did this to me, and it was because she was chasing an account for trying to close Florida State University, where I went to school. And she was like, do you know anyone there? And I was like, not really. But huge kudos for even reaching out and thinking about that. So it's an easy move. You'll get a notification for any net new executives that join. You can make this part of like your 30-minute, goal of prospecting every single Monday. If there's anybody here, take 30 minutes, do a quick check, write up these emails, give context. What a payoff in multiple ways.
So if you're doing this right, Sam, you're doing as much work as possible for the person you're asking the favor from, right? So you're sort of laying it out for them
Yeah.
And using words that make it feel like a relatively low lift.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think this is something that happened to me at LinkedIn all the time, where people would reach out and they were like, Sam, it's Bob. Do you know Chip House? Can you introduce me? And I'm like, no. Who are you, Bob? I don't know who Bob is. I don't know what efforts Bob has made before to try to get in this account. So that context is really key. But if somebody reaches out, right, connects with me on LinkedIn, welcomes me to the organization, et cetera, and then sends me a Slack or an email and says, hey, thanks for connecting. I actually had a quick look at your LinkedIn network and I saw you were connected to 3 of my top accounts, right? These 2 people at DuPont, these 4 people at Insightly, and these 2 other people at wherever it might be. I'm giving some quick context on the efforts I've made into these accounts, and all the moves we try to get in. We haven't quite yet opened the door. I wonder if you know any of these individuals well enough that you'd be willing to make an introduction for us. So think again, like you are setting yourself up, right? You're really giving that person such a positive impression of who you are, not only just by strategically and wisely reaching out, but second, by giving all of that context. What you also have to think about, right, is word travels like that, right? So that person's superior or their peers are going to say, how was your first week? Are you getting settled? That person's probably going to mention you and say, I have to tell you, I'm really impressed by Bob. Bob reached out. Is he well known in the organization? Oh yeah. He's great, or he's new. Tell us about your experience, right? And then what an awesome opportunity for you not only to crack into those accounts, but to get visibility in the organization. Final thing here, right? We know the smartest way to open doors is through relationships. It always will be. So the faster we can get that intro, right? Not only does that speed us to the lead, but it also speeds us to trust. Now, a quick power move here that I'll say, let's say I go to Chip and I say, Chip, I see that you welcome to Sam Sales, Chip. Decades from now when he comes to work for us. Welcome to Sam Sales. Would love your help on cracking some doors open. Do you know these individuals? If Chip says, yes, I know these 2 people and I can offer introductions, when Chip is nice enough to make that introduction, right, and connect us, one other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to want to come armed with some show me, you know me, right? There's a reason why it's framed here behind me. It is so important to our sales process. So take a quick look at that individual. Do you have other common connections? Are there other people that they know, perhaps that are already your existing clients or that of your companies? Is there anything that you can show that you've done a little bit of homework and say, talk about their alma mater, their hometown, other people that they might know, even if they're not your clients, or comment on something that they've written. Little things like that, particularly additional common connections, can go such a long way in building that trust. So if you think about it, if Chip introduces me to someone, I already have 1 vouch, right? I already have 1 referral, one word of recommendation. But if I go back and say, Chip, thanks so much. Bob, great to meet you. I also see that you're connected to these 2 individuals. They've been clients of mine for a decade, clients of ours for a decade. So lovely to meet more people that know each other. You've now exponentially increased the trust that you've already built by having the referral from Chip, and probably increased the odds that you'll get that meeting.
Yeah, if there's a power tip for 2022, it's probably show me you know me, Sam. So
thanks.
Yeah, we we love it, and I think we've learned a lot from it. I think it's super helpful for just a helpful lens to think about CRM and think about LinkedIn and the power of the data to just make your interactions more personal.
Yeah. And that's it too, right? Like let's even kind of give a power tip around that. There is so much information available in your CRM. So think about that, right? Pop in your Insightly, take a look at your contract records in there. What do we know? Even if you think about how you can do this with an inbound lead that you get, or a meeting that's booked by your SDR or your BDR. Take a look at who that person is, right? Take a quick look on their LinkedIn profile and see, does their name appear in your CRM otherwise, right? Do you have a record of this individual? Have they been a repeat buyer? Have they been tied to opportunities before? Do they even just show up? And if they have a relatively well-known name, right, like a Bob Johnson or even Sam McKenna, if they have something like that, just tie it to their old company, right? Take a look in your CRM and find that, because gosh, will you impress that person if you say, I see that you worked at these 2 companies before and that you've had a lot of conversations with us in the past. It seems like you're probably already quite familiar with what we do. I would love a little bit of background on that. You come prepared, you've got that show me, you know me, and the person's like, finally, a rep who does their homework.
Yeah, it just allows you to have way more human interactions with people. So it's a great segue to Sam, to power move number 3, which also builds on top of this data, but kind of through a different lens.
Yeah.
So if job changes are happening, they might also happen such that you as a salesperson inherit a new book of business.
Yeah.
And so what are your tips around that?
This is my favorite, especially, I think I say that for everyone. Now you guys are just going to think I'm a liar because they're all my favorite, but this really is one of the easiest moves that you can do in sales. So if you guys have been following me on Sam Sales for a while, you know that we talk about prospecting, right? And sales in general as just a huge game of Sherlock Holmes. That's one of the things that I love the most about sales, right? We can put all these little pieces together. We can do all this sleuthing, and a new book is no different. So with a new book, obviously you want to segment first, right? Particularly for some of you who work for smaller companies and you're like, I have 7,000 accounts in my book. What am I supposed to do? So segmentation is really important, making sure we're going after our lowest hanging fruit first, according to, the verticals that we are really successful in, et cetera, obviously important. But the other thing that I like to do is what I call my 18-month CRM hack. So take a quick look through your Insightly records, right? Have a look at any opportunities that were closed, lost, or closed, canceled in the last 18 months. Now, if you have an enormous book, 18 months is going to be bananas. So take a look from 12 to 18 months ago. Start there and then slowly work your way backwards, right? 9 months to 12 months ago and then closer to you now. But what you'll do with that let's say 6 months of data from a year ago to a year and a half ago, when you look at that report, what we want to see is who is the person that was attached to that contract record on the client side. So let's say we looked at that at Sam Sales. Let's say Chip, was attached to one of our records and somebody new on our sales team got Insightly in their book. They would go and say, okay, Chip. And the next thing they would do is say, is Chip still at Insightly? Did he leave? Did he get promoted? Is he in another line of business? Where did he go if he moved? Is it in my book? Is it in somebody else's book, et cetera? Now, this is going to take some work and it's going to take some time. It will pay off in spades. If Chip is still at Insightly and Chip is part attached to a closed loss record from a year ago, I'm going to look and see why, particularly for someone like Chip. He's a CMO, right? So if I can reinvigorate a conversation with him, and if obviously CMOs are my ideal client profile, my buyer, I'm going to want to do that. So even just reaching out to Chip and just say, reigniting our conversation between Sam Sales and Insightly, time in the next week or two, ? I might send a subject line like that. I might also do a really good show me, you know me. So I might pull something from his LinkedIn profile or recent post, something like that, and put a subject line together that shows him that I know him, and then try to get him to open that email and take some time with me. The last thing I want to do, by the way, when I send those emails is I don't want to say something like, hello, Chip, I'm the new AE assigned to your account. I would love 15 to 20 minutes to talk to you. Don't do any of that generic sales stuff, right? Instead, think about just how to be human. Chip, I saw that you've had some conversations with us before. I know that things didn't quite go as we had hoped, but would love to see if there's an opportunity to support you as you're planning your 2023 year ahead. I'm newly assigned to your account. There's a couple of things that I bring to the table in terms of expertise in product, in marketing, in sales, in demand gen, and whatever. Here's a couple of things that we're working on to help other clients. If any of these are on your top strategy list, would love to share a little bit about what our clients are doing and then see if we could potentially support you. What you want to think about in that email is you're already showing Chip you know him. You're already driving a little bit of value. You're already saying, I know a lot about this space, so I can be of value to you. I can be consultative, right? And then you're giving 2 or 3 or 4 things that your clients, right, are already focused on, and telling Chip, this is what our clients are focused on. If you are too, be happy to share with you some of those strategies that they're focused on, and then again, see if we can be of support to you. So when Chip sees that, he feels hopefully like 30 minutes of his time spent with you is going to be useful. If nothing else, he's going to learn what other clients that are similar to him are doing, what they're focused on from a marketing perspective or demand gen perspective or whatever for the year ahead. And then he's going to walk away with some tips, even if he has no intention of buying you. But here's the thing, right? Somebody like Chip in a CMO role or in a senior seller or senior buyer role isn't going to just waste their time. They're going to come because they genuinely want to learn something and they have challenges to solve. So share a little, give first, right? Lead with that generosity, and then use that to open the door of like, what are you guys focused on here? Have you considered that? Is this an angle you're taking, right? And then you can spin that into a really great discovery call and hopefully an opportunity. Again, if you see somebody that's like Chip attached to your contract record that has moved and has gone to somebody else's territory, do them a solid, right? But a quick look at this kind of graveyard of deals, if you will give you so much opportunity to either reignite conversations or see where somebody has moved. This is also fantastic, by the way, for the people that wanted to buy you, but let's say a different buyer got in the way. So for instance, once a long time ago when I was working at On24, we had somebody that really wanted to buy us while they were working for Cisco. And IT was like, we offer a competing platform, not On24. Why on earth would we spend money with a competitor? And the marketer was like, please, no, we need this money. And IT was like, absolutely not. So shut down our deal. Well, that person changed jobs and went to SurveyMonkey about 6 weeks later, and we got the deal pretty quickly. So things like that, right? Not all closed lost and closed canceled are because they went with a different vendor or hated you or whatever, right? There's always different circumstances that come into play. But great tactic to use.
Yeah, Sam, it's so interesting. All three thus far have sort of built on top of building strong relationships, with your customers and your entire network, frankly, and then emotional intelligence that you talk about. And so the next one to me is, it's a bit of a pivot from the initial stat of a job changer, but it's one I'm really excited about. And you and I had a discussion earlier this year on our episode of Closing Time about referrals and just the power of word of mouth and the power that you can see as not only a marketer and a company at large, but a salesperson individually by really leaning into referrals. And so again, I'll share a stat that we have is about 20% of our business comes from word of mouth and referrals, and so that's because they had a positive experience the first time around and they want to come back and they want to work with us again, if they could. And so they refer their friends, et cetera, to with their positive experiences. And that's the kind of glow you're trying to create. So if you're an individual selling person, how do you take advantage of this?
I think a few things. So timing is key, right? And again, I think EQ probably bleeds through every part of our sales strategies at Sam Sales, but that EQ is really important. So what we want to think about first, right? We've closed a deal. They've signed on the dotted line. That's great. Where I think we miss the mark sometimes is the reps are like, thanks for signing. Who else do you know that you could introduce us to? And the client's like, I haven't even experienced what you sold me yet. Slow your roll. Hang on just 1 second. So a couple of things that I would say. One, making sure that if you are a net new business seller, this referral technique is so important to you. But kind of to what Chip was talking about earlier, we want to make sure that we're investing in our relationships, we're building them, we're making sure that the services that we offer are great. What we usually do as net new business sellers, though, is we sign on the dotted line, we move that to a CSM, or an AM, and then we say, thanks for signing, ticker. And we're off to the next. What we really want to think about is how can we invest in that buyer for the long term? So quick little bonus hack here. Once you sign a deal, set a reminder for yourself. Throw it on your calendar, throw it, in your Insightly task, whatever it is, but throw a reminder for 30, 60, and 120 days. And what I would literally write is like, email Chip, see how it's going. That's it. Or email Insightly team, see how it's going. And with that, 30 days after Chip signs, as he's going through onboarding with Sam Sales or whatever it is, right? I'm going to send him an email and say, just checking in on you. And say, I know you've been working closely with our CSM team and our AMs. Wanted to check and see how implementation was going. Love your feedback. Is there anything that I can do to, lend advice or help escalate anything that you might need? Just wanted to pop in. What your buyer is going to see is, well, Sam doesn't need anything from me anymore. She's already gotten what she needs from me, but she's checking in on me anyway. That's so nice. And then I'm going to do that again at 60 days. And I'm going to do that again in 120 days. I think one of the pieces of feedback I always got when I was an employee is, maybe for better or worse, but I was always focused on our customer first and our company second. So when I would sell a deal, if I found out that a customer was having a hard time, I'd usually blow a gasket, politely and very diplomatically and professionally, of course. But it was most important to me, what happens with our company isn't important. What happens with our client is important, because without our client, we don't have a company. So making sure that they're well taken care of, making sure that they're getting great communication, timely communication, making sure that nothing seems to be lost in translation between our transitions is really, really valuable. And what an amazing way to play the long game, particularly when you're checking in and offering your time and attention when you need nothing from that buyer. So one of the things I would suggest first and foremost, let's say at that 60-day point, or even if you do 30, 60, 90, right? I would vary it a little, by the way. I would do like 30, 61, 93, just to make it seem a little bit less calculated and more authentic. But at that point, maybe it's that 93-day point, or maybe it is the 121-day point. Whenever you get a positive line of communication from that buyer to say, I just have to tell you, this has been such a relief. We've done so many great things, right? This has been the answer to our prayers for everything that we needed to resolve with XYZ. As soon as you either get that right proactively from the client, or you ask and say, was this the right decision? Are you guys happy with the technology? You get that positive thing, then go back and ask and say, as you know, and as I'm sure your sales team practices, one of the best lines for net new revenue for us is referrals. I would love to see if you happen to know any of your peers that could find value in what we do. To make it even easier for you, would you mind if I took a quick look at your LinkedIn connections and sent you a few names of people we'd like to meet? Now, let me pause here real quick. Most of the time when we at Sam Sales talk to our clients, we're like, let's talk about referrals. Do you have a campaign around that? Do you ask for referrals? And the client's always like, oh, yeah. Referrals are great. 20% of our business comes from referrals. And we're like, cool. Is that proactive or reactive referrals? And they're like, what? And we're like, exactly. So reactive referrals, right? Exactly what Chip talked about. 20% of our business comes from referrals, right? Inbound leads where somebody said, XYZ raved about you. We would love to see a demo of your technology. Now, proactive referrals is the game changer here. And that's precisely what you're doing. Going to one client after the next and saying, do you mind if I look at your LinkedIn connections and see if there's anybody that you know that could also benefit from our services? You're making it really easy for that buyer, right? Worst thing they can do is say, oh, thanks. And you can be like, wait, why? I thought you loved us. They'll probably say yes. They'll even more likely to say yes, right? Because you're taking that work off of their shoulders. And instead of you saying, can you think of anybody that you know that would find value in us? Instead, you're going back to them to say, I will look for those names, which means instead of relying on them to decide who they're going to introduce you to, you can selfishly take the reins and find the names of the people that you would most like to meet. Now, one more thing here. What I always like to do, seems a little cheeky at first, but stay with me, is if Chip agreed to this, I would go back and I would say, Chip, I came up with 13 names of people that you are connected to on LinkedIn that I would love to meet. Now, the reason I'm giving 13 or 15 names is because I know that our LinkedIn networks are also often filled with people that we don't know. We've met, at a conference in 2008. We have absolutely no idea who they are. So what I want to say when I send those names over is to say exactly that. I know there's a ton of people that we're connected to on LinkedIn that we don't know how we know them. So I thought I would hedge my bets. It'd make it as easy for you as possible. And I would send you this batch of names, hoping that you know one or two. When I'm really hoping that he knows like 6 or 7. And he comes back and he says, I know like 7 of these people. They're all my old roommates from college. Do you want me to introduce you to all of them? And I'll be like, that would be peachy. Just a few more things here, and then I promise I'll stop talking about this tip. Make sure when you send the links over, make sure one, that you are sending LinkedIn links. So if I just say, Chuck, do you know Bob Johnson? Or Chip, do you know Bob Johnson? He's going to be like, I don't know who Bob Johnson is. Can you send me a URL? Number 2, when you send that URL, be really mindful that is the LinkedIn.com URL, not the Sales Navigator URL. Probably 50% of the time I get a Sales Navigator URL, which most of the time doesn't work because it comes from their corporate account. So be sure to keep it really easy, and it's that LinkedIn URL. And the final thing that I would say is make sure you offer to ghostwrite that introduction. So I can ghostwrite an individual introduction for you for all of them. I can write, a batch, one single one that you can take and that you can drop into anybody's email, whichever one works for you. Again, we're taking the work off of that person's shoulders. And by doing that, we're also increasing the potential that they are actually going to follow through with that. Final thing, and then I'm done. When you do this, right, and Chip comes back to me and he's like, great, sounds great. Ghostwrite me the stuff. I'll do all the intros. When I send that over, I'm going to send it over and we'll say, thank you so much. Let me know if you need anything. I'll look out for emails over the next couple of days. If you have time, assumptive close. I would like you to send these the next couple of days, very lightly and politely suggesting it. And then if he doesn't do it, right, or if I don't hear back from Chip, what I'm going to do is probably respond in about a week and then say, wanted to pop in, ask you about these. And was anybody game for an introduction? No worries if you haven't gone to it. I know how crazy schedules can get. If Chip doesn't respond, probably going to let it go. I might send him another email or just say something along like a nurture campaign, reply all and be like, hey, by the way, oh my gosh, I thought of you, or send him a quick DM about something to get Chip hopefully to say, oh, that's right. Crap. I was supposed to do those intros for Sam. But if he hasn't done it after my 2 asks and maybe my 3rd little nurture, I'm going to use my EQ and I'm going to drop it. Either it's just not a priority, he hasn't gotten to it, there's other things, right? But the last thing I want to do is annoy and nag. I want to just use a little EQ there. And then certainly 60, 90 days, I can revisit that and say, we'd still love these intros. Should you be open to it? Last thing that you can do is you can also do your follow-up strategically on a weekend. And yes, that sounds terrible because you're going to ask your referral source to work on a weekend, but they might see it on a weekend and be like, I never have time to do this in the week. I'm just going to punch this out for Sam right now on a Saturday morning while I'm catching up on other work and get it done. And now I will officially stop talking about this point. No passion whatsoever.
Right, none at all, Sam. There's like 5 different power moves built into power move number 4. But I mean, just the discipline on the 30, 60, 90, doing the homework, coming up with the names. And then I wanted to ask you, put you on a spot a little bit, because I know that you send thank you notes, written thank you notes.
Yeah.
That's maybe a power tip that certainly would differentiate you.
Yeah, so we are huge on handwritten thank you notes, and you guys might all be cringing, thinking I have to pick up a pen and find a stamp and address things. And yes, you do. But here's the great thing. So handwritten thank you notes are huge. I would say number one, make sure that it's on your individualized stationery. Do not send it on corporate stationery. You can literally go get a 20-pack of Kate Spade envelopes at a small bookstore or online or whatever, and notes, and then just send those out. Make them a little bit more refined. So just make sure it's not too flimsy. That's just the bougie Sam talking there. But send a handwritten thank you note every single time you close a deal, and make sure you send it to the people that are involved in that deal. What's really important about that, right, is nobody does that anymore, right? Like we do that. And it is such a nice thing that stands out. The other thing that we like to do is we like to send handwritten thank you notes when we lose the deal. So that is one of our top Sam sales hacks. What you've got to think about is we're not always going to win the deal, right? We're sometimes one of 6 or 7 or 8 vendors that are being selected for something, or people are looking at SKO speakers and they're looking at 3 or 4 people, and we just don't always win the deal. It just happens. So think about how you can set yourself apart. If you send a handwritten thank you note that says, Chip, thank you so much for considering us for this work. We, of course, wish it had turned out differently, but wish you nothing but the best with XYZ vendor that you selected. If we can ever be of help with this, or frankly, anything otherwise, please don't hesitate to give a shout. Thank you so much again, just for the chance to potentially earn your business. You're going to knock your buyer out of your chair. You know what I love about this move is the person that won the deal probably isn't sending a handwritten thank you note. So you as the loser, right, of the deal, nobody wants to be a loser, but we're a loser, 80% of the time with our closed last deals. When you think about that, you as the person that didn't win the deal, you send that no, people are going to be like, who is this person? And man, I probably made the wrong decision in picking another vendor. And be like, that's right, you did, all without ever having to say that. Now, one quick note that always comes up is, that's great. How do I find people's addresses? Because everybody's at home, except for Disney employees. Too soon? How do I find their addresses? Here's what you do. Simply send a note and say, Chip, thanks again for all your work with us. Could you share your best mailing address? We always like to have, our Insightly records up to date. Could you share your best mailing address with us in case we ever have something we want to pop in the mail to you? That's it. Use mailing address. If you say home address, it's a little creepy, particularly if you live in their same town. Don't ask that. But mailing address is a very easy way to get that. And then you'll get their best address. I think we've only had one time where somebody gave us their business address, and it was because they lived in DC where I live. So fair enough. But everybody else typically shares home.
Yeah, no, it's powerful on the receiving end to get something in the mail and get a handwritten note. So I just wanted to call that out as a differentiator. So we're already to power move number 5 here, Sam, and it's researching how Q4 ended for your prospects using LinkedIn, their website, and positioning outreach based on their results. So talk to us about how one would do that.
I think this is big too, right? It's not about us, it's about them. And what a great way to do show me, you know me, right? So if you have been talking to your prospects, if you've been negotiating a deal, if you've been waiting for the right moment to get in the door, right? Considering that a lot of organizations didn't have great results. They didn't end up where they wanted to be. A lot of organizations had massive layoffs. I think I was just reading yesterday that we've had the biggest round of layoffs in this quarter compared to April 2020, which was the top. Many of you might also be in that position and looking for roles right now. But what we want to think about is we want to use that information to our advantage. So for us, one of the things that we're thinking about at Sam Sales, everybody is saying do less with more, right? Do less with more. We have less employees. How do we still get to these higher quotas? How do we still get to our goals? And one of the things we think about is how to do just that, right? So how to utilize our services in a way to be more efficient, how to even work with us in a way that might be less revenue for our organization, but still a way to make impact. Some of the companies that we're talking to about trainings that aren't inexpensive, we're saying, hey, like, why don't you sign everybody up for our recorded sales trainings, our SAM shorts on our website? And then why don't you host an hour or two of Q&A, right? You're still going to get everything that's out of my head, out of me that's in my head, just in a recorded fashion. And then you'll still get some one-on-one time for a lot less money than you would be hosting me live, right? We'd love to do all these live sessions, but what's most important is that we get your teams what they need. So think about that, right? And I think what an impact you can have to buyers if you're thinking outside of the box, instead of just pushing the same proposal you were pushing over and over again, and use that EQ. Now, the other thing that you think about, right? How do they end? What podcasts have their executives been on? When quarterly earnings come out, right? When they talk about how the year ended and you get all those financial results, particularly for you guys that are selling to public companies or enterprise grade companies, use that information, use those quotes, use things that are coming out of their reports and your subject lines. There's an organization that was working with us on their why, and they're like, we feel like we are a nice to have, not a need to have, right? So how do we communicate that we are a need to have to an organization? This is a company that we're trying to get into. We can't get into it. How do we do that? And I was like, well, let's look at their website. Let's look at their recent press releases. What can we find out about them? What have you guys found out about them? And all the reps are like, nothing. And we're like, okay, great. So let's do our basic research, pop on their website. And we found that they had a press release recently that talked about how by 2025, they were hoping to double their valuation. Lofty goals. Cool. How are you going to get there? So this is what you can do, right? When you take something like doubling your valuations by 2025 with, and then company name, you can write a subject line like that, right? That looks a little bit research, has some show me, you know me, and then say, what a lofty goal. Just read your press release. So curious. What's your path to doing that? Curious specifically, what's your path to doing that with specific respect to, and then insert the kind of product function of that company. Just writing an email like that, right, got the attention of the buyers to say, one, nobody writes us that stuff. And then two, we haven't really given thought to how we're going to get there through this channel. What's your advice? What a great way to open the conversation, right? Using those quarterly results, using that information of what their goals are for the year ahead to show that you're smart, to show that you've done your homework, and to show that you have invested 10, 15, 20 minutes of time in exchange for the 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of time that you're asking back from them.
Yeah, great stuff, Sam. Hey, so we're going to recap the power moves. So Sam, just make sure you summarize these for us and pull out any tips that you have.
So again, remember, we want to build that if this, then that process, right, around our job changes. So anybody that you talk to, anybody that's tied to your opportunities, your champions, your users, the people who love your platform, make sure you're adding them to your job hopper list in Navigator so that you can track those job changes. Again, creating that search in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Tell me anytime a net new executive, low or high, depending on the size of your company, joins our company so I can reach out to them, hit their 500 connections, and then say, I know you know these people at our deal. Any chance you know them well enough to offer an introduction? Again, making sure we're doing our 18-month CRM hack, going back and looking at any closed lost or closed won opportunities, right? Who are the people that are tied to them on the client side? Are they still there? Have they moved? Have they been promoted? Are they in your book of business? How can you reinvigorate those conversations? And then again, thinking about how we set that 30, 60, 90-day reminder to check in with closed won deals. And as soon as we get a positive note that says, we loved working with you, this is so amazing, we proactively ask for those referrals with all those tips that I mentioned. And then the final thing, keeping tabs on what's going on with our buyers and their companies, right? Quarterly earnings, fiscal year results, net hires, layoffs, right? Making sure that we've got part of that EQ built in, maybe reaching out to Salesforce and asking them if they want help with recruiting. Not the right time, right? We want to think about that. Use the data that's out there and the company news to make sure that we're offering the right thing at the right time and working with that intelligence that we have.
That's so great, Sam, and can't wait to go to questions. So while you're getting your questions in, please type those in now if you could. I just want to take a second to talk to you about Insightly if you're not familiar with our platform. So Insightly is a modern CRM. It's mobile, it's agile with robust features in one cloud platform, but not at enterprise prices. And we build it for fast growing companies. So it's built to scale and grow with you. So you'll never outgrow it, even as your organization becomes larger and more complex. And we hear from our customers that their teams love it. They find it easy to use and adopt across their organization. And if you've been a part of a CRM adoption before, you know that ease of use is almost the most important thing. Will my team actually use this piece of software? And you can see that example there from Joanna and how they've been able to triple revenues in less than a year, leveraging Insightly. Customers also tell us they're able to significantly improve key sales metrics. They mentioned how they've increased pipeline, sales velocity, deal size, and predictability. And they love our dashboards. We just did a webinar last month on our dashboards, and they're highly customizable. And in fact, if you're interested in seeing that and any other content that we have, you can visit the resources section of our website to see any of those recent webinars as well. So Val, I'm going to ask you, what questions do we have that have come in that we want to pose to Sam?
One just came in from Rebecca, and I think this is a good one. She says, Sam, you said low-hanging fruit on inheriting a book of business. To segment, how would you determine the low-hanging fruit? Is that the lost accounts?
Great question. I'm going to guess this is from Rebecca Edwards. And if so, it is so appropriate because Rebecca works for a law firm. And so let's talk about this. So when I transitioned from an account manager to an AE, so I was an AM for 2 years, then became an AE, which is really, really scary for net new business. I took a quick look at my book and I said, what's my lowest hanging fruit? What can I go after? And I found at my company that we had 3 of the largest law firms in the world that were working with us. And I was like, well, why those 3, right? What is our white space in that vertical? And then quickly interviewed those CMOs. I think Rebecca, even your former CMO, Jim Durham, quickly interviewed those 3 CMOs, said, why us? We're a tiny company. You could work with anybody else. Why have us? Got that information, then use that to just open up that entire vertical. And I think same thing too, if you have a pretty niche, let's say you've got, tech is huge for you, or a particular vertical is huge, look to see where does it really make sense to sell your product? What is the easiest way that you can sell your product, your services, or your attorneys? Find those verticals where you have already a great footprint, and then look what's in your book territory-wise that's open. The final thing I would just say on that that I think is also especially useful for law firms, but certainly in tech, where do we have? If you again do the search in Navigator, you can look for prior employer and then write yours. So former company, write your company, and then current company, write your book of business, right? Or your top 100 or 200 accounts, put that in there. And then look for anybody that formerly worked for you. So alumnus of the law firm or alumnus of your tech firm or whatever used to work for you and now works for them. That should have been one of our pro tips, Chip and Val. Look for those people that have worked for your company, know your value, know your culture, know how you deliver, and now work for another organization that you're trying to target. Such an easy way in and such an easy way to find low-hanging fruit.
We're going to do this one more question from Kate, and then we'll have to wrap up because of time. But Kate says, do you recommend working your list in LinkedIn, or do you connect to your CRM and download the information? Katie says she's new to LinkedIn Navigator.
Oh, welcome, newbie. We're very excited to have you. It's such a powerful tool. What I would say, I personally prefer to work out of my CRM. So if I am lucky enough to have Insightly, I prefer to have everything in one place. I will say like the view, keeping those records, keeping my data clean and everything is fantastic. So awesome opportunity. If you're more of a give it to me all in one screen person, you can do that. I will say I do spend quite a bit of time, definitely did as an account executive in Sales Navigator. So just checking those reports, those leads, all that data. Some of that does not integrate with CRMs. So there's some data that is private, and it's a member privacy issue that LinkedIn doesn't allow for that data to flow through to any CRM of any kind. So you'll still want to see that in Navigator. But I would say honestly, carve out 30, 45 minutes of your prospecting time a week to spend in Navigator. I would spend 30 to 45 minutes of additional prospecting time in LinkedIn. So commenting on executives' profiles, doing all sorts of things to add to the conversation. Look for influencers. If you target sales leaders, come and comment on my profile. You will find tons of people in there that are right up your alley that you can get introduced to. social selling is the way it's a way to go. And if you're not in LinkedIn for a couple of hours a week at a minimum, I would say you're really setting yourself up for a disadvantage. And there's so much great data. And I'll say finally on that note, I get the question a lot, how much time do I spend on LinkedIn a day? About 3.5, 4 hours a day. It is that important, it's that powerful.
All right, well, we've definitely run out of time. A couple more questions came in, but we'll be sure to pass them along either to Sam's team or the Insightly team, depending on who is best to answer. Sam, Chip, thank you so much. I know I learned a lot. We have great power moves. As Chip mentioned, I think we had more than 5 packed in there. So lots of stuff for people to chew on. Everybody, thanks for kicking off 2023 with us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Ken. Bye.